in functional programming, you want to use, if possible, methods that get one input and then output another object on the other side. You don't do side effects, right? So you don't create functions that will take one object and modify it and then don't return anything, right? They return null or undefined, and then somebody else downstream will pick up that object from a particular location, right? That's not a great way of writing code. It's it has drawbacks, because once you start writing such code, then you have to be aware of multiple like services, methods, all changing data in your widget, and that makes your life a lot harder because you don't see easily what's going on. So on the other side, I'll be using this particular example here, like where we just want to add a new topic in our article, and you can see there is an article, right? So we are using it from context, the context of the article state, right? So this is where like the article is stored in the state itself. So there's this nice getter here, right? And if we return here, I'm gonna make a local copy just to be able to check its type here. It's a bit of a hassle from Dart itself, but once we are past this stage, then I know the type of article, because here I have the base class. It could be one of these three states, but here I check if it's the OK state, right? So I'm checking the OK. And what I'm doing here is the following. I get this new article variable. There's a method which does copy with. So it basically copies everything from the previous article and it replaces the summary property. So here we are spreading the contents of the previous summary of the list, right? And we are adding a new one. And that's like a bit of, there are multiple things going on here, right? So first of all, we have deep cloning of the article and then replacement of the property summary, where we are reusing part of all the existing items in the initial article, but we are adding a new topic, right? So it's a pure functional clone of the article where we replace one item, right? So we don't want to...
How
Yeah?
do you make that it's deep?
I don't hear you too well.
I'm sorry. Is it better?
Yeah, go ahead.
How do you make sure that the copy will copy and not well, depends if for example article has a subcategory that's also a class and you do copy with this subclass will not be copied, but it will be the same, right?
Yes.
How do you make sure that the copy with is really a deep copy?
I remember this question. We had it like a few months ago, but that's a good one. So basically copy here, you are gonna work with the assumption that you are dealing with a team that is trained, right? Here, there's something that I'm using in this project as a security policy. I made sure that everybody in the company understands how to use this particular, workflow, like from state store to everything else, right? So here we trained every single developer to understand that when we do a copy with, it better be done, like full, and it's like then using the internals of like whatever is going down there, for like doing additional layers of cloning if we need to do so, right? But here we are not doing a deep clone, we are doing a shallow one, because you see like we are just getting the first layer. And then like when we copy this stuff, then you have to make sure that here you are avoiding to reuse instances if they need not be reused, but here we are reusing, right? So for me here it wasn't a concern of like duplicating everything, because there was no point in doing so, right? This is the only new item, everything is fine, can stay the same way. So shallow clone here, this is like just copying old references, adding a new thing, right? So it's a mix of everything. And basically, to answer your question is the following. Every single developer should know how to do either deep cloning or shallow cloning depending on the particular scenario. And I know it's a shitty answer now, it's not an easy formula, but basically the easy part of this answer is that I know for sure that all of my colleagues will do the right thing because we had lots of training, so we won't make, you know, silly mistakes. And we will talk, you know, before going into a task, we will have a discussion where we plan ahead what needs to be done, right? And if we know, hey, we want to do this kind of cloning, we need to clone part this, and then we need to add these new objects and so on. So basically, there could be multiple situations, but each one of these we discuss it, you know, and we find the correct solution for each one of those. There's no like universal formula.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot say
but
like
in this case, it's a shallow clone, right?
It's a shallow clone.
At first you said it's a deep clone, but it's not.
No, it's a shallow clone. Sorry.
You would have list.from for list properties to deep clone the lists, and I think you need copy with for the objects, right?
Yes. So I got a bit.
And also need to implement the deep clone.
Absolutely. So I got a bit carried away, you know, with the explanation because like I have to also read the code at the same time. So I failed to recognize that's a shallow one, but definitely we need to understand like what's a deep clone. Deep clone means you are going all the way through and you're copying everything again. And the shallow means like we are copying only the first level and everything down below is like just references. So it's half new, half old, right?
The new.
You seem to have bad connection. Maybe you can do something about it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Still?
Yeah, now it's good.
Yeah. So I wanted to say, so the new article basically has references to the same lists that are a subcategory or as a field. The article object had.
Yeah.
So
exactly. I'm reusing the same objects, but this is not an issue, right? Because I know that in this particular situation, it's not an issue, right? So you should be aware of your local context, what is happening there. If you need a deep clone or if you need like a shallow clone or if you need no clone at all, just pass the reference. Here we need something in between, right? So the cloning part has to be done depending on the requirements of your code, right? I cannot say you need to do always deep clone or always shallow clone or always this and that. You always have to be aware of like what do you want to take from the existing from the existing data set and whatnot. And some people go to the extreme of saying like everything should be cloned, right? And that would be like most purest way of doing it, you know, like deep cloning everything, and therefore you have no references, everything is just like sliced out, and there's no way you can like communicate the wrong information, you know, to an old state. So you could have issues with sequencing of events, of like updating something that was an old state. You try to do the update there and it doesn't show because the template uses the new state, right? So that could be an issue itself. So you need to be aware of like the locations where this can happen. If you don't have this awareness, you will always have bugs and surprises. And I can tell you from my experience, there's no silver bullet for this, right? There's no easy one measure fits all solution. You always have to be aware of like what you need to clone, where you need to clone. And if you don't do this, then I can tell you, sorry, you'll always have troubles ahead if you don't understand this part, right? What you are cloning, where you are cloning, and why so. And here... Yeah, go ahead.
Can I understand? And you tell me if that's correct?
Yeah, sure. Maybe we should also try to do it, you know, in the end of the segment, just so I can focus on the functional part, and then we do the final, you know, questions.
All right.
Good. So here, this thing with the, you know, shallow clone here means that we are creating a new object which has like references of the old. We are changing part of it, and we get a new one. The functional part of this programming style is like that. You see the end result here in a new variable, right? So input is here, output is here, and then you can pass it along. So both input and output are visible in the same function body, which means like there's fewer places for you to look around, you know, to understand what happens here, because you get input and then output goes the other way, right? So that makes it more easy to understand. And this kind of style we do prefer to have when we are writing functional when we are writing state store code. It makes our lives easier because I have to dig far fewer levels of code to understand what's going on here. And then there's no surprise change done by somebody else in the background, you know. So I often say there's a distinction between implicit and explicit, right? So implicit means something that happens implicitly. You should know that it will be happening somewhere, right? That's called the side effect. That's often happening in OOP style of programming. And explicit means that you place everything upfront, visible. So I made this variable visible such that the output is visible. We know it's coming here. We can breakpoint on it and see what's there. And there's no hidden, you know, stuff, because I could also be doing something that wouldn't require this new variable. I could change that context straight away, right? We have it here. I can change it straight away from there, and that's OOP style. And then that's called the side effect, because I will have to remember that actually the contents of my work are somewhere here, you know. They're not here in my function body. Now, with functional approach, I know my contents are here. I can see every single step, every single change. There's no surprise implicit change. There's all the code is explicit. That's like a quick intro of like what functional programming means, right? And then I know it's very shallow. It's not enough to make your brains clear, but at least it's gonna serve you to teach you that you need to learn more about this topic. And then like the other part of like functional programming is to always work with pure data, right? So here in this model, you can see that we don't have methods floating around. Of course, we have from JSON to JSON, copy with, but these are like just, yeah, just management of data stuff, right? Simple stuff. There's nothing dangerous about them, right? It's just like basic features needed to be able to, you know, get data from the server, push it back to the server. There's nothing special about them. Otherwise, you don't see other methods here, right? It's all just some data sitting here waiting to be processed from outside. So that's again like a characteristic of functional programming. I'm not calling methods from the object itself to apply this change, this particular change. You see, like this particular change could be a method inside of the article object which says like add new summary topic, right? I could have this kind of code here and it would do the same job. So it would be article, right? That's the object, and then I can say add summary topic. There you go. And then I can say what kind of topic, yada yada, and that's shorter, right? You would say that this is better. I would say no, because it hides away the precise details of what kind of shallow cloning, deep cloning I'm doing, right? Which makes me less aware of my current, you know, setup. So once you hide away stuff, then there's opportunity for bugs to show up. That's why we prefer having the approach of functional programming instead of OOP programming, right? So one way to encourage everybody to use functional programming is to model your business objects such way that there's no method, you know, inside that does some business logic inside of the model itself. That's OOP, right? That's object-oriented programming, where you have like everything together and makes life harder. I will explain in another lecture more about this, but for now, let's just say keep your objects only with data. It will spare you of lots of pains, right? Try to use pure functional, which means like input, output, all visible, explicit, and then it's a lot easier to understand your code. There are far fewer places where your code can, you know, create a major issue, and therefore it's a lot easier for you to understand what's happening because everything is visible in plain sight. So that's one of the benefits of functional programming. And overall, you know, like it's helping you once again because it teaches you to be far more aware of your code and what it does and how it works. Then you have a far better comprehension of what should be happening there. And this is like the source of most bugs. The fact that we don't understand our code. It's not that the computer works wrong or whatever. It's just like we simply don't understand it. And functional programming helps you to make it easier to understand your code, right? Now,